This is Maud again. I'm back. So thank you for coming back for the second recording. And today I just wanted to kind of give a recap from the first video. The first video was based on a video clip that had circulated on social media, and it was a man and a woman, a young couple, and the wife was complaining to the husband that she was just not getting enough sex, and she was wondering what had happened because things used to be good, and all of a sudden, he's just not showing up, or she's just not getting enough. So they end up going into an argument about this whole thing, and the husband ultimately accuses her of cheating. And you can tell that this woman is being very genuine with what she's saying, but the man is not having it. So the conversation that followed with this group of women indicated to me that this issue of this disparity in marriages, whereby a lot of women in general feel like they are just not getting enough sex in their marriages, meaning that people are living in sex starved relationships, married good couples, but there's just not, either sex is missing or it's inadequate according to the other person's perspective, and just what to do about it remains a mystery, and as a result some homes end up actually breaking up. So my husband and I have been talking to other couples about this thing, sometimes in more formal settings, group settings, friendships, just to try and help a couple or two, because obviously this is a real problem. So a poll was sent out to this group of women, and the responses from that poll were trying to differentiate sex and lovemaking. And interestingly, what turned out, which something I went, that was the assumption I went in with, that there is a difference between the two. So, having said that, the results of the poll indicated that um, sex is just the ultimate cake. But love making is a process, it's a lifestyle. It's based on our love languages, it's based on our different interests, different expectations that we come in with, the way we were raised. A lot of things come into the love making process, and for you to actually end up having good sex, it begins in the morning when a couple says, have a good day. It happens during the day when you check up on each other. It happens during the day when they come home, they kiss you, they check on you, you check on them. It's a lifestyle. So good sex in a loving relationships is always a culmination of a love making process, which is not exactly having the actual physical sex. So that's basically the recap from video one. Now, the people who listened to that video, thank you very much. If you're listening again, thank you. I received your feedback either via conversations, text messages, or just comments that you sent. And some of the feedback confirmed again the existence of these problems. And the issue remains that people just don't know what to do about it. Yeah, we know about it, then what do we do? But you can't really solve a problem if you don't walk through all the variety of issues that are surrounding this problem. So today I'm just going to go through, based from my perspective, or rather our perspective as a couple. We come from a background of Christianity. Like I said in video one, we are Christians, and our perspectives are based on that. Having said that, why would I need to go back there? We can't have good sex between a man and a woman in a relationship, in a marriage relationship, if we don't put some of these pieces together. And whether you believe what I believe or you don't, at the end of the day, I think we just have to understand that, you know, as a Christian, marriage is a covenant. So whether you believe that it's a covenant relationship or you don't, but it's a very deep relationship. And the one thing that all couples have in common is this act of sex. So now my perspectives from this point on are based from that perspective of marriage being a covenant relationship. So what is a covenant? So, from the perspective of Christians, or from the perspective of where I come from as a married woman, a covenant is a very tight bond, or a tight relationship. It's a very, from biblical terms, it's a very strong bond. And our God that we worship is a covenant keeping God. He does not break covenants. So when we get into these marriage covenants, we're walking in there hoping that this is it till death do us part. We say all those vows and by faith take this spouse's hand and put a ring on them, and you hope that it stays there for the rest of your life. But sometimes some marriages end up being a statistic, and there is no expert in that manner. A lot of things can happen, and one of those issues is sex, but we don't call it that. We call it money, we call it children, we call it other problems, but there is a lot of undertones of the bedroom being a big issue, but society is just not comfortable sometimes to talk about it. If you really talk seriously with people who are having issues in their marriages, you might be surprised to see how much sex has a lot to do with their problems. Now, let me go back to the sacredness of marriage, to the sacredness of sex, to the sacredness of this covenant relationship. Marriage is between two imperfect people who are made in the image of God. And as a result, when we treat sex from that covenant perspective, it becomes very sacred. It's a gift. And from our perspective, what has liberated in our marriage is to realize that actually sex is a form of worship. You're thanking God for this gift, because next to the intimacy with God, the only other relationship that you are that tightly close to another, flesh to flesh with another human being, is during the act of sex. And as a result, we have gotten to learn, or we've been taught, that it is worship and treat it as such. And if we don't treat it as such, it is the evidence of the covenant relationship that we have with one another. It is an evidence of the spiritual perspective of sex. It is the evidence of the fact that sex is not just physical, which is the title of today. Sex is more than a physical act. Now, if we don't have perspectives that are rooted in the right things, sex is replaced by lust. It's supposed to be rooted in love. But if it's not rooted in love, it's going to be rooted in lust. And lust takes and love gives. Now, as a woman, this is what I believe. I believe that I'm fearfully and wonderfully made. I was created to be in this relationship with my husband. I'm intended to be there, to be the nurturer, to bring the character of God, to bring this nature of God that my husband cannot bring, because that is the image of God that I represent in the marriage. Everything that a mother brings is the image of God. And then we are created, we are beautiful, we are created to be loved. The Bible even says, if you believe in the Bible, we were taken from Adam's rib. So you're almost like a weaker vessel, a lesser vessel. It doesn't mean that you are unequal, or you are not. It doesn't devalue you by being called a weaker value, but a weaker vessel. It just gives you a different kind of value. You bring a different kind of nature of God. And then men on the other side, they are created for greatness. They were there before women, so they are created for greatness. They are created for to represent this power, this masculinity. They are created to be respected, and we are created to be loved. So this love and respect balance that we bring together, when you do it right and you combine it, then we have a covenant relationship. And then God gave us the gift of sex on top of this sacred relationship that brings His image together. So we are intended to have guiltless sex, where if you're having sex, the only image you're imagining about is the person that you are with, not some other thing or some other person. And so no wonder when you are involved in this act, if you look at it as such, as the image of God has come together, the image of God has been put together, and this act is a form of just thanking God for doing such a miraculous thing. I think it's miraculous. Babies come from that process, and as a result, there's a sacredness to this act. And if married couples could look at it like that, it will revolutionize your home. It has revolutionized our home. Now, the world, like I said earlier, has told us that, the TV portrays all these women and all these men, this kind of masculinity that is not even real, this kind of sexuality and femininity, the love relationships that the media has portrayed, or society has portrayed. Some of it is very unrealistic, or they are very unrealistic expectations. Now, I want to go on to say that because we're created so differently, our needs that we have are fulfilled differently as well. And you find that if you don't realize that your husband, even though you come in expecting that, oh, my husband will be providing and do this and do that, and for some circumstances, illness, economy, whatever, those roles end up being reversed. Some couples end up struggling because now this man has this perspective that he's created for greatness and this, and now how can I be doing all that if I'm doing the female responsibilities? We have to move away from that. It doesn't mean that if the roles in life have been switched, you can no longer love her the way she wants to be loved, or you can no longer uh, respect him and give him the greatness that he expects that he was created for. So my point here is it doesn't matter what your circumstances are. If you are striving to have a good covenant relationship where sex is sacred, where sex is viewed from a godly perspective, it is so important that we come back to reality and come back to the biblical perspective of what God intended this thing to be. Marriage is God's idea. It is not man's idea. It was his idea to begin with. So if we go to church and we get married, we exchange vows, but when it comes to practically living it, we want to live it according to our own expectations, we end up with problems. So what's the point? Sex is more than a physical act. Sex requires two people who are equally joined together to create an image of God, and it's two people who have been gifted with the gift of sex. And that takes me to the next point. There are some areas of what I can call confusion about sex. The first one is that I probably have had to discuss with a lot of people. I mean, I might have been also messed up in that at some point, thinking that it's shameful for a woman to initiate sex. That is a lie. I don't know where that lie came from. I think some of it is because the church would teach children to keep yourself, girls, keep yourself, hey, boys, keep yourself before you get married. But we don't tell them that it is a good thing. It's supposed to be done right. It's a very enjoyable activity. It's got all these benefits, including even healing, even bringing joy, bringing happiness in a home, bringing parents together. It's a good thing. So girls get married, they've kept themselves, but they don't know what to do. They are shy for the rest of their lives. Grown women embarrassed to walk around naked in front of their husbands because nobody told them what to do after you've been married, after you've kept yourself. So we don't take this to the extent it's supposed to be taken. Sex is a good thing, it's a gift, but it has to be done between a man and a woman in the boundaries of a covenant relationship that God created, that institution of marriage. I realize that I'm not naive to the fact that there are different cultures. I know that there are some people in different cultures where guys are taught that a woman who initiates sex gets names, is frowned upon, and that is a myth. There's nothing wrong with a woman who is equally created to expect sex from their husband, to ask for sex from their husband. Why should that be so unheard of? When we have physical needs as well. So I'm just here to encourage, especially people who are getting married, people who are younger, to realize that you don't have to treat your woman as if they are something because they are initiating sex. It's a good thing. If at all, you should encourage them. You will see how dynamic your relationship becomes. And even some women are raised being told that you cannot initiate sex. You don't do that, And for some reason, I don't know. I hope that mothers like myself who are raising young boys and young girls, we teach them the right thing. There's a lot of distorted views about sex out there, and as a result, like I said, people bring them in the home and it messes up this covenant sexual relationship that God gave us. Now, you and I are created in the image of God, like I said earlier, and in this image we have three parts. Just like the God is God the Father, God the Son, God the Holy Spirit. Human beings, we have the flesh where the desires of sex come from, and then we have a soul where we debate things in our thoughts and our emotions, but we have a spiritual aspect to us. So sex is very spiritual. It is not just physical. So when you have sex on the physical in your flesh, it translates into it passes through your soul. You enjoy it. You know what it means, and whatever perspectives you have, the flesh and the soul dance together. But you have the spirit man who understands the things of God. And that's who I'm trying to talk to today when it comes to sex. May your spirit man be in tune with your sexual needs and your sexuality. I'm going to pause and ask a question. Have you ever prayed for your sex life? Have you ever prayed for good sex? When was the last time you prayed for your sex? And if you've never done that, I just want to encourage you. Prayer works. It has worked for us, and I know that it will work for you too. So before you turn to alternatives, before you start looking around for, oh my God, it's not working, oh, we're going to get divorced, pray. God will give you wisdom about what you need to do. A lot of people are uncomfortable to associate sex with God. But God and sex are very related. How can a good God be a covenant keeping God, a God who promises all these things, wants to be a part of your money, wants to be a part of your children's lives, your health, but is not interested in your sex life and your physical needs? I don't think that makes sense. So I'm encouraging you today. Invite God into your bedroom, invite God into your sex life. God is intimately involved with our desires and our needs. The next thing I want to talk about is the world views. I've already touched a little bit on all that. God cares about us. We are soul, we are spirit, we are flesh. You're not going to hear about this on TV. You're not going to hear about this in a movie, unless if it's a Christian movie. But I'm just encouraging all of us that having multiple sexual partners opens up doors that we don't understand. The reason being, when you're having physical sex with somebody, it doesn't end there. There's a physical component to this, and as a result, I cannot explain that. I'm not qualified to talk about the doors that are opened when there is a sexual intimacy with multiple people. And I would hope that if you are in the boundaries of a marriage, you don't open doors like that, because I believe they are difficult to close and we don't understand them with the eyes of flesh. So let's not engage in sex and treat it as if it's just physical. It is not just physical. It is a spiritual act. In the spiritual act, there's love, there's patience, there's peace in that moment, and it's a different level of euphoria. And if you really look at it, if you look at sex from the perspective of the fruits of the spirit, you will find a lot of them. The fruit of the spirit, you will find it during a sexual encounter with your husband in the boundaries of a covenant marriage. If you've never looked at the fruits of the spirit and relate them to your marriage, I want to encourage you to go on a personal Bible study the fruits of the Spirit, and really allow the Spirit of God to speak to you in terms of sex and the fruits of the Spirit. The world is not going to tell us that. Some of the novels we read are not going to tell us that, but it is in the Bible. We just have to pray and ask for God to open our eyes so that we can see. The last point for today is marriage can be heaven or hell. It can be the closest thing to heaven or hell. And why do I say that? I say that because marriage is between two imperfect people who are pursuing a perfect God. And if somebody in that situation is not pursuing God, marriage can be so distorted, and as a result, sex is distorted as well. And it can be the closest to hell if we don't know what the issues are. So I'm here to encourage somebody. If you're having issues and both of you feel and are convinced that nobody's cheating, nobody's doing anything strange, maybe it's a health issue. So seek help. It's okay to call the doctor and say, hey, my wife and I haven't had sex in 2 months. I don't have a good reason for that. She's complaining and I don't know how to stop it. I need help. There's help out there. There are things like unresolved conflict. There's things like unforgiveness, which can also impact our sex lives. So I'm here to encourage you that if you think you're stuck in that and you're failing to move past that, and as a result, your covenant marriage relationship gift that God gave you on that beautiful day when you got married, and you put this ring on each other's fingers and you exchange those rings, and you're failing to meet at that level, seek help. It is not normal that sex does not happen in a home of two healthy individuals. It is not normal. But then again, if there's physical issues, that's why we describe love making. Love making is a lifestyle, it's a process. People can still enjoy each other sexually without necessarily having sexual intercourse, because it is a process. That's why we have to experience the love making process while we are healthy and young, because a day might come when that is no longer possible. But if you've established a lifestyle, you could still enjoy each other's physical side of you, and still enjoy this thing without necessarily having that final act of physical, because it's not about that all the time. Past experiences, which I hope to address next time. But our past experiences, I know that some people have been raped when they were little. Some people have gone through some, I don't know, traumatic situations for whatever reason. And some of those traumatic situations do impact your sex life today. And if that is you and you feel like you're stuck, and maybe you've never even told your spouse that you went through stuff in your life as a little boy or a little girl, look for help, because it might just take that talking about it and opening it up to somebody else, and you will be freed and you can enjoy your life. We don't want to live in a living hell in these marriages. They are not intended for that. It's God's idea. He has good plans to prosper us. He has good plans for us. He never intended for you and I to live in a marriage that feels like hell. Stress, hygiene, all those things, they all impact our sex lives in our marriages. So the next thing that we will talk about next time is poor communication or good communication. One might say, what would you be communicating about when it comes to sex? Well, there's a lot to talk about. There's a lot to communicate about when it comes to sex. But we'll talk about all those things in the third video. And I hope that in that video, my husband will be a part of it and we can sort of hopefully share some ideas together. And I hope you're being blessed. These are just personal experiences. I'm not an expert. We're not experts. We're just a married couple, been married for 24 years, and feel like we have enough experience to be sharing, just like other people invested their lives in our own imperfect life. And I also want to say that it doesn't mean that when you share about these things, you have a perfect life or a perfect sex life. Absolutely not. It just means that you've realized some things that work and some things that don't work, and we are opening ourselves up for one or two people who might be struggling and who might be helped, and that's it. You know, the Bible says, go ye and preach the word, and these are other ways that we can preach the gospel in the simplicity of our homes. God bless you during this time of COVID. Wash your hands, don't touch your face, stay healthy, and our prayers go out to all those who are suffering because of COVID-19. These too shall pass, and it's going to be okay. See you next time. Thanks.